flub every line, give me every you got, and do it right now. If I can just trim off the beginning.
I know.
We're keeping all this.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry, hold on.
32 super fans.
I couldn't understand a word they were saying.
One pod vader.
You fired up for that, man? Huh?
Every angle of the NFL covered.
We on go time. We still on go.
This is Next Fan Up.
We're live, bro.
Oh, hey, it is I, Josh, your Detroit Lions super fan, and boy, am I excited. We have a super fantastic Super Bowl episode. Not sure if we are allowed to say that, but we'll call it the big game episode here of the Next Fan Up podcast, and very excited to have another couple super fans alongside me here, and we have not only James, our Texans super fan, but also Justin, our Seattle Seahawks super fan, joining us as well. James, I'll swing it to you first. How are we doing today, sir?
Another day of constant regime change. It should be interesting to see where the whole quarterback situation leads in the next couple days. But instead of doing something depressing, I would much rather focus on my addictive personality and gambling habits.
Excellent. Well said. And Justin, how about you, man? How's your 2021 so far?
Oh, it's going great. I'm going to make a absolute fortune off of fake currencies if my Robinhood starts working again.
Of course, yes. We are recording this in the midst of the throes between GameStop and all the craziness, the Redditors and all the Robin Hoods out there, and everything's, kind of, it's just kind of one big adventure so far in 2021. And, I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with legal gambling here in the state of Michigan. So here in the Mitten, boy, I tell you, I've already got my favorite sports books, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about here today. Before we go ahead and hop into everything, I did want to remind you guys that this episode of Next Fan Up, this prop bet special, and everything we are about to go through, of course, just like your bags may shift, during the flight, some of these odds and lines may have shifted. So don't hold us accountable for anything you might see differently on your preferred sports book of choice. But ours here is Thrive Fantasy, thrivefantasy.com. Of course, getting you guys set up with a nice little promo code here for Next Fan Up. And that is the promo code. In fact, Next Fan Up, all one word. We're going to go ahead and double your guys' deposit. It's going to be a minimum $20 deposit all the way up to $50. So if you guys want to go ahead and try that out, they were kind enough to be the sponsor here of our show. So we want to definitely give those guys a shout out right here off the rip. And go ahead and, boy, where do we dig in here? It was my favorite nickname so far has been the kid versus the goat. Of course, with the kid being a baby goat, I find that rather ironic. But we enter this one, Brady versus Mahomes, the Chiefs against the Bucks in Tampa. The first time we've ever had a home Super Bowl matchup. And the Bucks come in here 3 to 3.5 point favorites, depending on where you're looking here. I was fortunate enough to get some 3.5 earlier on in the week. It did kind of hover around that 3-point margin here, but I'm starting to see it a lot at 3.5 again now. Fellas, I'll go ahead and throw it to you first, Justin. With that line, what was kind of your first thought here when that came out late on Championship Sunday?
That half point, I feel like, is huge, right? A lot of times when we talk about like bets and values and things like that, there's sort of this disconnect between like, we think of the scores of like normal football games, but these lines are set very precisely and a lot of thought goes into them, and they shift a lot based on sort of public interest, right? Like what we call the action. And for me, that extra half point definitely is like that little bead of sweat on my head, right? I feel
no doubt. Oh, I was going to say, no doubt. That
okay.
Key number of 3 is huge. So getting that extra point is massive.
Exactly. I would be very confident, and which as a bettor, very confident means very willing to put money towards, Chiefs winning by a field goal, right? It's football has very fixed units of scoring, and that's a big part of why those fractions of points make a big difference. So winning by a field goal for a team that I think most people would agree is better and therefore more likely to win this game more often feels really good. That extra half a point, though, like that's when I start thinking, like, yeah, I think they could cover that, but like I maybe don't feel so good about putting a decent chunk of money on that at this point.
No, I can understand that. James, what did you think initially on Championship Sunday? I personally really like that. That's why I got on it early myself. Looks like being in a hurry really didn't matter since we're recording this a week out and it's kind of still sitting at that mark. But what were your thoughts on the initial line?
Yeah, I mean, even going into the playoffs, you could always bet like NFC champion versus AFC champion, right? So even at the start of the playoffs, you could go in and you could get whoever comes out of the AFC versus whoever comes out of the NFC, and that number was always around like 2.5. There's just kind of this general consensus that the AFC was going to be favored no matter what. I think this particular matchup, the 3 versus 3.5, doesn't scare me quite as much. These two teams did play earlier this season. It wasn't particularly close. You look at past Super Bowls and you get kind of a weird distribution of numbers as far as like what the final margin is, especially since they moved the extra point back. Looking over the past, I guess it's been 3 seasons now that they moved the extra point back to more than just like a 20-yard field goal. And you start seeing the distribution of scores normalize a little bit. So you still have like very high peaks around 3 and 7 and 10 and 6, but like now you're starting to see it blend into like the 4, the 2. Even like 9 wasn't a super popular one, but just because of the missed extra points, the prevalence of going for 2, these numbers start to bleed together. And so if I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win by 3, then picking them to win by 3.5 is not that much of a stretch. I realize you're giving up a little bit. You're giving up the possibility of a push or a draw, whatever your preferred term for tie is. Like ties aren't fun. Like they're going to keep playing the Super Bowl. Does it take 2 overtimes, 3 overtimes, 4 overtimes? It won't matter. They're going to keep playing. I shouldn't at the end of the night be like, yes, I got nothing. It's just a little less exciting. So the 3.5 doesn't scare me as much as the 3. I prefer the half numbers just because, you're guaranteed an outcome on that one.
Yeah, well, I think we can all kind of agree on that. But, if there is one team that's able to cover a 3.5, it's the Chiefs are pretty explosive. I know they really haven't, had a good habit of covering, especially this season. They down the stretch, they really kind of fell short on a lot of those and let some people down. But to be honest with you, with this point total, I mean, I think that speaks to kind of everything, 56.5, book dependent, of course, but you're looking at, the over under being, minus 110 on whatever side of that, point total you're on. Personally, last week for the championship games, I parlayed both of the overs. I know that sometimes these playoff games tend to be a little more physical, maybe a little more slower and have a slightly lower point total. But we saw last week with some of these offenses and the way that the NFL's kind of evolved, shootouts are more prevalent than ever nowadays. And this 56.5 total is definitely a sign of that. I hammered the overs last week. I know that this game, I think, got to 51 when these two teams played in week 12, but that was the Chiefs getting off to a very quick start. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the Tyreek Hill explosion first quarter game. But what do you guys think? James, I'll throw it back to you real quick. This total feel about right to you, and kind of what position you taking on it, on what side?
Yeah, I mean, my general stance on when I gamble on things, I always gamble for like the more exciting outcome. So I'm going to take the over. I've seen 56.5, 57. I don't actually expect to win this bet. You look at past Super Bowls and even the ones that have been declared like, oh, this is going to be shootout territory. There are some that kind of fit that bill. Like the Atlanta New England one actually comes to mind as one that eventually turned into a shootout. But like Rams versus Patriots a couple years ago where it was 13-3. Like that was going to be the offensive juggernaut of Sean McVay, and he got held to 3 points. Like you have so many different factors that come into just being able to shut an offense down for one game. There's a lot of unknowns that can also come into play. Patrick Mahomes is obviously going to play. but is coming off of that concussion. Tom Brady, I hear, is 43 years old. I mean, I don't know if anybody's covering that particular storyline. But like just getting one of these quarterbacks out of the game early will drastically impact the odds of going over. I'm less concerned because these teams are just stacked at skill position players. Like, it would really suck to lose Tyreek Hill or Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. But like, if there was ever a Super Bowl that is just like, well, next man up at wide receiver is also going to have the potential for like 1,000-yard and be a solid number one or number two on another team, like you're at no shortage for players that can just make this a Madden style running the scoreboard up game.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Justin, kind of what's your thoughts here? I like the over a lot on this, but I've been kind of putting that into some other bets, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So if I'm just going on an island and just putting one bet on the over or under, I'm kind of using the under as a hedge, to be honest. At minus 110, I mean, either way, it's the same. But what way are you leaning?
Yeah, I like the over here. For me, I think back to the NFC Championship game, right? And, sort of the storyline coming out of there is how the Green Bay offense was shut down and how great the Buccaneers defense played. And, that would have covered this. The final score was like 31-26. And frankly, the Chiefs have a better offense and a worse defense. So I think the odds of there being more total points in this game relative to that seems pretty high to me. And especially I think that you look at Tom Brady's performance and he had a really poor second half of that game. I mean, he didn't have a great game in general, but he had a really poor second half of that game. I don't think he's going to throw 2 fourth quarter picks. I just, in the Super Bowl, I think he's going to play better. And if anything, if the Chiefs are ahead, which is one of, 2 or 3 most likely outcomes is the Chiefs have a decent sized lead in the fourth quarter. I think a flurry of points out of them gives them a great shot to cover. So this is one where I would call it a pretty strong lean on my part towards the over.
Well, you guys both kind of alluded to the skilled position players, and I kind of opened this talking about how explosive Kansas City's offense is, and let's not overlook Tampa is as well. So I mean, I will say this: you earlier you talked about that Atlanta and New England Super Bowl. If you're looking at any live action, hey, check this out. If KC goes up by double digits early. I'm looking to get some Bucks plus 7s and higher if it's out there, because Brady can come roaring back. I mean, both of these quarterbacks have shown the ability. Mahomes just last year, in Super Bowl 54. So, James, what other thoughts do you have here before we start talking about some of the other favorites for MVPs and whatnot?
Yeah, the one last thing I wanted to add is also, like, you brought up the regular season game where KC got out to a hot lead or a big lead and then just kind of like coasted. Traditionally in the Super Bowl, like, unless you're the Atlanta Falcons, even though you get up to a big lead, you don't play by like the regular season mercy rules of, okay, well, we're going to run the ball, we're going to kill some clock. I mean, you do that to some extent, but like if you're up 21 in the Super Bowl, you don't sit there and think time to pack it in. It's time to go up 28, time to go up 35. It's a lot different than when you compare it to a regular season game where you might bring in Chad Henne to start the fourth quarter, right? So,
yeah, good point. And I think that's kind of an obvious indication, like you mentioned, that Week 12 matchup. KC, if they do get out to a big lead early like that, I already mentioned it creates an opportunity to get some live action on Tampa. But, KC is more likely to run it up, though, so you can't really discount that. And I think that's a good reflection of where the money line is in comparison to the spread here, with KC at minus 175 in that range in most places, and then Tampa at plus 150 in most places. So that's pretty, I mean, that kind of tells the tale right there, as far as who thinks what's going to happen. So it's I haven't actually looked at where some of the public money has come in on this, but I know there's some good sources to do so. Action Network being one of those, where you can kind of see like the percentage of the money and like what percentage of the bet. So if you want to kind of contrast those together, I think that's a good way to kind of get a feel if you're comfortable doing a money line here or not. anything jump out at you as far as those two differences?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're going to bet Tampa, or if you think Tampa's going to cover, bet Tampa to win. The vast majority of teams that go in as underdogs, they win outright as opposed to just, losing by not too much, especially on a 3.5. I'd much rather get the extra little bit, the plus 150, as you said, as opposed to you giving me 3.5 points and saying, and that effectively costing me, 50% on my bet. So if you think Tampa's going to win, don't take the points. Or if you think the game is going to be close, then you have a much better value if you go straight Tampa Bay plus 150. And in like the live action game, we've been talking about either of these teams can get off to a hot start. If you don't want to go and find like Tampa Bay plus 7, or if Tampa Bay goes off to the hot start and trying to find KC plus 7, look for the second half totals. And what you can do is you can say which team wins the second half as far as points scored. And so, Kansas City goes up, say 21-7 at the start of the second quarter. Find that second half score and just say Tampa Bay scored more points in the second half than Kansas City. You'll typically get just as good odds as like a Tampa Bay plus 7 at that point. And it's a lot easier to make as opposed to Tampa Bay coming back that much.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be looking for is, Bucks plus 7s and whatnot. So, Justin, what about you? Moneyline thoughts here? KC 175, negative 175, Bucks plus 150.
Yeah, I mean, I think James is obviously right that if you're going to pick, one side to cover the spread, you might as well just go, whole hog and go for them to win. And really, these money lines are, I think, where the decision needs to come down. If you're going to do a couple of bets, you have to assume that you're going to win some and lose some. And so looking at how much you stand to win and how much you stand to lose off of like a generic $100 bet or what have you is pretty key. I mean, realistically, you look at that money line for Kansas City, what that's telling you is that kind of everybody, not everybody, but like that's a pretty strong line for a Super Bowl, right? A lot of people feel pretty good about Kansas City winning. And so even though I feel the same way and I think they're likely to win, I don't know that I necessarily love betting on them because, I have to invest $165 to make $100. It might be worth, taking a flyer on Tampa Bay because I don't think even though I think they're less likely to win, I don't think the odds are that far against them. I think that, maybe Kansas City wins this game 6 out of 10 times. And with where that money line is at, that might be enough to tempt me to actually put some money on Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you guys. I mean, I think that's a pretty obvious, favorite as far as where I'm going to put my money is the Tampa plus 150. So, speaking of favorites here, MVP odds. I mean, it's always favorite toward the quarterback. I mean, if you look at, there's, some places you can get MVP is minus 275 or the field at plus 225. So it's usually it's going to come down to the QBs. You're looking at even money in most places with Mahomes. You're looking at plus 200 with Brady. And then that's kind of where it starts to get fun and you start looking at some values. First, I'll go back to you, Justin, with the quarterbacks. I mean, are you putting a little bit there on an MVP bet on one of those guys just because it's the more safe option, or do you tend to just kind of have a little more fun with the MVP chase?
Boy, it depends. I mean, so this is a strategic question. I might put this to you guys. Let's just say you've built your bet around Tampa Bay, just sort of like we discussed. And again, listeners, we're not advising you how to bet your money. We're just kind of using these examples and some of our thinking. But, if you put your bet around Tampa Bay winning, then if Tampa Bay wins, then the odds of Tom Brady winning MVP are incredibly high, right? Even like significantly higher than what we see from these lines right here. Would you guys take your previous bet on Tampa Bay winning into consideration here, or are you taking this one in a vacuum?
So for me personally, the values that I'm into, there's things like Chris Godwin, for example, like he's plus 3,500. But when you're comparing that to the quarterbacks, with Brady being plus 200 and then the money line at plus 150, I mean, yeah, those are kind of like a no-brainer. If you feel strongly enough, I mean, partnering those together is probably the move, right? I mean, wouldn't you say? I mean, with just the disparity of QB versus the field, minus 275 to plus 225. If if that's kind of where the dominoes start to fall, right? Like Tampa wins, it's probably going to be Brady. I'll talk about a long shot that I kind of like that is reminiscent to about 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my position on it is I don't know if I'm going to bet it, alone outright. I mean, you could just because it's one of the safest things to do, but MVP is one of those things I like to have a little more fun with. James, what about you?
So, yes, is the short answer. I like to have fun with the MVP. I don't like to build it into any of my bets. There are some good bets that you can find where it's like Chris Godwin scores 2 touchdowns and Tampa Bay wins. So, like, if you think Chris Godwin's going to have a good game, go find that bet because that's like a plus 12,500 bet. So you're basically getting 125 to 1. And the reason I bring that up, like you're thinking, okay, well, if Chris Godwin gets 2 touchdowns, he's probably going to be MVP, right? Look at what happened last year. Damian Williams had over 100 yards rushing. He had a rushing touchdown. He had, I believe, 75 receiving yards, 5 or 6 receptions, and a receiving touchdown. He had the go-ahead touchdown. Mahomes had a fine game, but like by Mahomes or even like MVP standards, it was kind of a pedestrian game. Yet Mahomes gets the MVP. Like, if you're telling me a running back can get 100 rushing yards, 70 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, and I don't think he even got maybe 5% of the MVP vote, like, you're only ever going to get a quarterback as MVP. Like, they just have to put up an average game to get the MVP. And that's kind of a garbage thing because it's still fun to bet like the 30 to 1, the 40 to 1 guys for MVP. But when I look at the MVP bet, it's basically like, what would have to happen for the quarterback to not get the MVP? I thought last year was a really good story with Damian Williams, and the quarterback still got the MVP. So, when I'm looking at long shots this year, I'm trying to shy away from pass catchers entirely, just because if they have a good game, by necessity, their quarterback will have a good game.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and I think you make a good point about those other players. Like, I always tend to think of it as there's this incredible amount of like momentum and pull towards the quarterback, right? And it's constant throughout the game. And so if somebody else starts doing better and maybe that momentum starts to shift, it's still being pulled back towards the quarterback. It's very difficult for the quarterback not to do it. Over the last 10 years, only 3 non-quarterbacks have won the MVP, and 2 of those were linebackers on all-time historic defenses that led their teams to the Super Bowl in Von Miller of the Denver Broncos, which was, Peyton Manning with, the weakest arm he's had since he was a toddler, and the 2013 Seahawks, which had, one of the best defenses of all time, and Russell Wilson wasn't really allowed to throw the ball downfield. And so like even the examples where it's not the quarterback is like you said, it's kind of a very unique examples where the whole team is not like a modern NFL team. That's not the case with either of these guys. Neither of these teams are going to be, all-time historic defensive juggernauts. And I certainly don't expect any of us is going to think that either of these teams win because of their defense. And so like that's why that quarterback, that's such a strong pull towards the quarterback. Even if somebody else has an amazing game, even if the quarterback has a serviceable game, it's going to be really hard not to give it to him. And going back to sort of the initial question, that's why I really like that Tom Brady bet, because the odds of him winning MVP are, to me, the same as the odds of them winning that game. And the odds of them winning that game, kind of like I said earlier, I think is about 4 out of 10, which the amount of money that they're giving you on that makes that an incredibly appealing bet to me.
Yeah, there is one thing, as we've talked this over, Justin, I kind of getting on board with this because when you go back and look at some of the games that these Buccaneers receivers have had, you really don't have too many games where there's consecutive games where the same player kind of scores multiple touchdowns. But there's a ton of examples, especially in the last, 8-9 games in the second half of the year where Brady just spread the ball out. And I think you saw kind of a sea change when Antonio Brown came in. The target shares were distributed a little bit more thin. There was, not as many yards there going around. And so the slices of pie just basically got smaller. So I think that really drives home the QB. I mean, the MVP chase basically it just comes down to which quarterback pretty much every year. I mean, you guys kind of made very, very good points on that. do you guys have a favorite long shot though for MVP? Like I'll give you mine. Like for $5, you could just pick like one of the Tampa. Like if you want to pick Carlton Davis, or if you want to pick Antoine Winfield, a la Dexter Jackson of the Buccaneers last Super Bowl championship, where he had two interceptions, and I think he ran one back. He's only like the second safety, third defensive back to ever have won it. I'm thinking Larry Brown of the Cowboys, and I'm drawing a blank here. I want to say back in the heyday of the 70s Raiders, there was another DB that won that. But $5 gets you $1,000, right? And later on, we're going to do a fake $1,000 pool where we challenge, I should say, where we spread the money around. So yeah, I'm going to take a $5 bill and throw it down on a couple of these Bucks DBs, because if one gets a couple picks and especially seals the game, I mean, that just your Bucks money line looks good. The Bucks are going to have to win to do that, and you might as well throw a few bucks down. It's better than lotto scratch offs, right?
Oh, I agree with you completely. I think with how little the investment is and how high the potential upside is, there's no reason not to grab a couple of guys. I do like the idea of throwing it down on a couple of defensive players. I know I just made the entire case for why it's never going to happen, why it's never going to be a defensive player. but if we're just talking like just hypothetically, right? Of the 3 non-quarterbacks who won an MVP over the last 10 years, 2 of them have been linebackers, right? Give me a guy who can like rush the passer. What if Jason Pierre-Paul, right, has a monster game, has, let's say, 3.5 sacks, tackle for a loss, right? Gets one of those fat guy interceptions, and the Chiefs score less than, 24 points. He's in play, and he won't cost you a damn thing, and you would make a small fortune off of that. I love those sorts of bets. I would still stay away from the position players, specifically the wide receivers, for the reasons you mentioned. Like, yeah, I know Julian Edelman won like a couple years ago, but I have a hard time seeing Tyreek Hill having an MVP game and it not showing up on Patrick Mahomes' stat sheet and him winning the MVP.
Right,
so,
right. Yeah. And Hill isn't a guy that's going to haul in like 16 grabs. I mean, if anyone in this game's going to haul in that many grabs, it's probably going to be Kelsey. And that's probably where you start looking. And of course, Hill and Kelsey both, obviously, we just talk about those guys. Those are the next 2 in line for MVP favorites. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking a little bit. I mean, if $5 can get me back the whole 1,000, and you actually hit on it, why not? That's all I'm saying. So if we can get plus 20,000, yeah. Hey, sign me up. But the other thing that kind of reminds me of is, when you're going through these games, and it's fun to find, just like the random awesome performance, or the random prop bet that you just have a gut feeling is going to hit, or to kind of build some of these things. And if some of these sites, I just want to give you guys a quick heads up. A lot of these have like a 1-game parlay option, and most of the time you see this only during the big game. So but now these sites have this 1-game parlay option where it's just so much easier. If you go in there, you don't have the frustration of you get your bet slip out and like, geez, 2 of my 4 things I wanted to bet on aren't even allowed to be put together in the same bet. So you can't include it. Just if you go and build your own 1-game parlays right through the little menu that they have, sometimes they might have what you're looking for right there on a bet already set up for you, but you can build your own. And it just, trust me, it's easier. It's all there and everything's going to correlate. And that's how I like to build my value, is through correlation, by maybe, adding that team over, on the point total for, if you think somebody like that's going to have a big game, like we gave the example of, James gave the example of Godwin, well, hey, why not add the Bucks, team total, the over on that? There's got to be some kind of action, if Godwin's going to catch a couple bombs. So that's how I kind of like to build my parlays and whatnot, and some of my fun things. What are some other fun ways that you guys like to enjoy the Super Bowl? And Justin, I'll throw it to you first, or James. Yeah, go ahead, James. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, building right on that, like if you think you instead of betting on like MVP, like I said with Chris Godwin, take like a player's over on yards, toss a touchdown on there, like with your parlay builder, and then you're still cheering for the player, and you may actually hit it. The one MVP that we haven't talked about, and it's funny because I just railed against running backs, but like if you wanted to take a flyer both on Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, like I just think back to the one good memory of the Houston franchise in the past 3 years, and that's when the Houston Texans ran for approximately 3,000 yards against the Kansas City Chiefs when Patrick Mahomes was hurt. So Brady has a very storied career and a very storied history. When it comes to the Super Bowl, though, he has put up some rather crap games. So if you could see a situation kind of like last week where Tampa Bay holds Kansas City, or holds Kansas City like they held Green Bay, maybe Patrick Mahomes is a little bit off. If Brady's off, the only way they're going to score points is through the running backs. And so if Ronald Jones can go out there and go, 25 touches for 175 and 2 touchdowns, and they win the game, 20-17, like that's probably your most compelling story to make not Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes the MVP.
Right.
So, but other fun ways, I'm a huge fan of the parlays, like you were saying. If we're just back in the day when you can actually like meet with people, what I would do is a lot of these books will have like their top 50 parlays you can just print out on a sheet of paper. And I would take, 2-3 dozen of these to the Super Bowl party. Everybody tosses in $5, fills out the parlay sheet. At the end of the day, that particular site will release all the answers. And then whoever wins, you can do a, winner take all. You can do like a top and bottom prize for, 60% for the guy who gets the most right, 40% for whoever gets the most wrong. That's a super fun way to do it. And it's not the same like method as like squares or your more traditional Super Bowl bets.
Yeah, exactly. And did want to throw out a couple nice free options for you guys if you're out there. I think Quicken Loans is doing some Super Bowl squares. I think you only get one, and it's pretty random among quite a large group of people, obviously, groups of people, but also FanDuel doing big game bingo. That's been pretty popular here for the last few years. You don't have to deposit any money on any of those sites or anything to enjoy those games. Just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that was out there in case you wanted to have a little fun for free. Justin, any weird bets you like this year, or any other fun things that you like to look for during the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so go to your favorite betting site, and if you scroll way, 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 way down, you start to get to the section where things get very, very specific, right? Things like, who's going to score the first point? What's going to be the score at half? And you can start seeing these like double result bets, right? Like, who's going to lead in the first quarter and at halftime. And I love getting down to these, and you start seeing things where the odds just get sort of crazy, right? Like, the odds of, Chiefs leading in the first quarter and Buccaneers at half, right? They're giving you plus 900 on that. I love these things because you can pick a couple of things that are just sort of absurd and you will probably forget about by the end of the game, but can make the first part of the game really interesting before the other bets sort of start to mature and become realistic. And so I'm a big fan of those. Or like, or on the flip side, I also like just grabbing a couple of those incredibly safe bets, like just for some entertainment value and just to give yourself a couple of wins, even if everything goes south. So for example, like, will Kansas City score in both halves? The odds of them not scoring at least 1 point in each half are astronomical, right? And so, that's why it's minus 2,000. But because this is, a 99.9999% chance to win, I love putting like $20 on that and then winning, getting $21. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like just a couple of these, like infinitely, like it would be almost impossible to not come through bets. Grab a couple of them, make a couple of like tiny dollars here and there, but give yourself a little something to play around with and have some fun with, not related to like the big outcomes. Yeah, I love those things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people get that the new sign-up bonuses at a lot of these states where betting's becoming, legal and mainstream. There's free bets out there like will a touchdown be scored?
Right.
Pretty sure. I'm thinking during 60 minutes, one of them's it's gonna happen. I mean, boy, we got close there with that last Patriots and Rams Super Bowl. It almost didn't happen, but yeah, those are the things you got to be looking for, especially if you're a new bettor. I mean, there's promo codes everywhere. For example, thrivefantasy.com promo code next fan up will double your deposit. Big shout out again to those guys. But yeah, I mean, there's no brainer bets all the time. I think that's
and the thing I love about those, and it depends on like where and how you're betting, and like this isn't specific necessarily to the Super Bowl. This is just sort of like sports betting in general. If you can, build your own parlays, I love taking one or two sure bets and then combining those with the ones that, are a little bit more like judgment calls, because assuming those come through, which again, they almost always do, that's kind of the point, they become accelerators. They sort of multiply the value of the ultimate payout. And yeah, it's just a great, easy way to make yourself feel like a betting genius when you're not really doing anything that creative or smart.
Yeah. So, and Josh brought it up with the promo codes that are out there. Most of those promo codes, like, yeah, you put in $50, they give you $50, but then there's rules attached to those, the $50 that you get on that free roll. So that free roll might have to go through 5 or 6 bets before you're allowed to cash it out. And so that's one of the very few situations where I advocate for Justin's strategy of betting the minus 2,000s and the minus 10,000s. Like, there's a will the game go to double overtime, which I think is minus 50,000. So like you have to bet $50,000 to get a $100 return, which brings up why I never do these. To me, it's always been told betting things like this is like picking up nickels in front of steamrollers. Like, yeah, you're probably going to get out of the way, but like, was the nickel worth it?
No, that's a great analogy, man. There's also some real fun things non-game related. Like one of my favorites, James, we were on here like 2-3 years ago. You were talking about one that you and your friends used to do that year was one of your yearly favorites back when we used to be able to have Super Bowl parties. Was the first commercial going to be an Anheuser-Busch or whatnot? One of my favorites is like the Jim Nantz, it's like always a lock that he's going to say hello friends to open the broadcast. I've always kind of liked personally this one is game related, but like the first penalty, the first sack. My wife loves like the national anthem prop. This is a little telling. Tom Brady's been in so many damn Super Bowls. Like my wife likes the Giselle prop. Like, is Giselle going to be shown on the broadcast? I mean, like, my God, I don't think she's been with Tom Brady during all 10 of his Super Bowl appearances, but it's just crazy that my wife knows somebody's wife enough to like have that be a regular thing. Like, this is just normal, this is just old hat to have Tom Brady in the Super Bowl for the 10th time.
Yeah, we're going to have some Real Housewives of Super Bowl LV going on.
But I mean, those things are really, really fun to put together. You talk about like those prop lists, James, like you print the prop list out. I mean, I love a good pool, especially amongst friends, whether it's virtually or whatnot for this year. But I mean, it's fun. Everybody throws in $5-20, whatever, it's always going to be a lot of fun for sure. And
when you're, I guess this year to stay on brand, when you're Zooming or Uber conferencing with your friends while the game is going on, like the only thing restricting what you can bet on is your imagination at that point. Like right. Going to a casino and betting, like they do actually have rules and regulations as far as like what they can put up for a prop. You can look those up in your particular jurisdiction. But like when it comes to your friends, like if everybody wants to throw in $1 and say, I say the next commercial will be, or out of all of our group, I'm going to pick Nissan as the next commercial. And somebody's going to say, I want Anheuser-Busch or specifically like Mick Ultra. Don't bet Budweiser. Budweiser pulled all their ad money. Budweiser is part of Anheuser-Busch. Anheuser-Busch is still advertising Mick Ultra and Bud Light, I think, but they pulled all their, so no Clydesdales this year. So if you want to get a friend that doesn't pay attention to the news, have them bet that you'll see a Clydesdale commercial and just take their money.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, look at that. I love
So,
it.
like,
That's it. You don't think you're going to come and listen to Next Fan Up. And, we're not known for gambling edges, but, you just got a huge one with James.
There you go. And if you're not the chaotic, if you want to be more chaotic neutral, take their money, but then buy everyone pizza with that money. Like you knew the answer going into the test. Don't personally profit too much off of that.
Right. Yeah. So, everybody's like, oh, I can't believe that, man. You're a jerk. And then you're like, oh, well, why don't I just order up some pies for everybody? So, hey, it's a little more of a challenge this year, but it's still going to be a hell of a lot of fun either way. But yeah, you're right. You get together. You just got to make sure that the designated bookkeeper or the one keeping track of these prop sheets and scoring these out, you don't want that person to be wasted. Those usually don't. There's usually some flawed math there. So I'm just going to point that out. You gotta gamble responsibly, people. This is where we're at right now. But last thing, you guys want to get into the $1,000 challenge here? We'll take this fake $1,000 and throw it around.
Wait, it's fake?
Yeah. Hey, my show outline says we're wagering our fake $1,000. I mean, I'm not going to comment on how much I might have in play already in real U.S. dollars, but yeah, definitely excited to do this. I know we kind of talked about our favorite long shots already. I'm going to kind of incorporate a couple of those into mine. But Justin, do you want to go first with the way you've decided to distribute your portfolio?
Oh God. Sure. Let's do it. So, as we kind of said off the top, I do like Tampa Bay to win. And I do like Tampa Bay to cover. Again, I actually think the odds are a little bit better for Kansas City, but just based on where the money lines are, I think my odds of making more money are better this way. So enough so that I'm probably willing to take half of it and spread it between those two bets, between Tampa Bay covering and Tampa Bay winning outright. If I think we're going to get that outcome, then the odds of Tom Brady winning Super Bowl MVP, I think, are approaching 99.999%. I think he could break his leg in the first quarter and they would still give it to him because it's Tom Brady and that's just how the league is set up. Probably bring in another 200 there, so I'm up to 700. And now I like to start to have a little bit of fun, and I get a little bit more creative with it. I expect we're going to see a lot of passing out of both teams, and I think in particular we're going to see a lot of catch-up football from Tampa Bay. And so I can bet Mike Evans to have at least 7 receptions, which I think is a pretty reasonable bet in this game at plus 220. So I put another $100 on that. I'm up to $800. Now, this is where it gets really, really dicey. I think that Leonard Fournette is going to go for at least 70 yards rushing. So I'm going to put another $100 on that at plus 127. And then finally, and this is the most important bet, I think that in the Puppy Bowl, I'm putting the rest of my money down on Team Fluff, which is even. So $100 on Team Fluff. And if they come away the victors, $100 back in my pocket.
Nice. We have some eerily similar distributions there. I'm probably taking about a quarter of my funds here, going about $250 and doing, smashing some sort of combo between the Bucks money line and that plus 3.5, where I have that. Then I'm going to take probably about 200 and I'm going to hedge on all of these bets you're going to hear in a moment, which are kind of related to overs and whatnot. But the under at about 200 on the under, at 56.5. And then I'm going to take about 200 and put that on Tom Brady. Again, just to rehash everything that, Justin and James said. We didn't even talk about the running back by committee situation. I mean, the NFL, such a heavy passing league. There's 2 viable running backs on both sides. The Chiefs have 3 viable running backs that could play in this game. Just the immense talent of the pass catching group on both sides of the ball. It's everything skewed toward quarterback winning the MVP. There's a reason that they're so heavily favored and that it happens so often. So doing a little hedging with the under and a little safety with the Brady with 200. But then I'm also going to go ahead and take $100 and get a Tyreek Hill There's a couple ways you can do this. Tyreek Hill over on his yardage total, which is a little bit higher, 92.5. Then you got Kelsey at 84 or 85.5, kind of depending on where you're looking. But you want to partner either of those overage totals with the touchdown. You're going to be about plus 160 for Hill, about plus 135 for Kelsey. I think that either or extremely viable. You want to add another touchdown plus an anytime touchdown onto that is kind of where I was going with that. But you doing any yardage totals with the anytime touchdown, you're going to be about plus 160, plus 135. So really like those. With the last playoffs, Damian Williams just kind of exploding for the Chiefs. We've kind of seen that happen again this year with Darrell Williams. Kind of surprising, to be quite honest with you, but with Bell and CEH being dinged up, that really opened up a window for Darrell Williams. He's taken full advantage. You can combine him with the two guys we just talked about for 3 anytime touchdowns, one by Williams, Hill, and Kelsey, plus 650. So I kind of like that. I kind of like to put 100 on that. That automatically puts the Chiefs at, 20 to 21 points based on missed extra points and, 2-point opportunities. But you're going to look at stuff like first touchdown scorer. I personally think you're throwing your money away. But, if you are, I recommend combining that with something a little more obvious. I've seen where Kelsey to score the first touchdown and the Chiefs cover that 3.5 at plus 3,500. I thought that was kind of a mistake line. So does it happen? I don't know. I'm not going to put any money down to find out, but that's one option. But this last $100 I'm going to use on some of these ridiculous 5, 6, 7 leg parlays where I have all these yardage totals and team total overages and anytime touchdown scorers. And I'm talking like stuff where I can turn $25 into, 4,800, and throwing, $25 worth of $5 MVP bets out there, to kind of cover this whole fake $1,000 that we're ponying up. So, James, that's kind of how I'm distributing the bets. Where are you going, and what are you looking? How are you going to divvy this up?
Yeah, so I've got 6 main bets, and then kind of like you, I set $100 aside. I'm not going to bore everybody, but it's the same deal. Like I've got 5 or 6 leg parlays that, it drives it up to where a $10 bet will net me $1,000. I never actually expect to hit those. They're just more like fun. When you do make those types of parlays, write them down and then just put them on a piece of paper or dry erase board. And then as each one happens, like cross them out, and then you'll get yourself needlessly psyched up to eventually lose money. But at least it's exciting, right? And so you're paying for entertainment. Okay, so for the more serious bets, I found, will there be a lead change in the fourth quarter? That is plus 190. I will take a solid $200 on the plus 190 for there being a fourth quarter lead change. I usually like to do, will one team score 3 times or 4 times unanswered? Unfortunately, that has become much more popular in the past 4 or 5 years. So where you used to be able to get like plus 500 or plus 600 on that, now for a team to score 3 times unanswered, and again, it doesn't matter which team, they're looking at like plus 225. That's not quite good enough for me, so I'm going to shy away from that one. Okay, highest scoring quarter, plus 250 is the fourth quarter. I'm going to take that one. I'm going to put $200 down on this one. It's either going to be the second quarter or the fourth quarter is typically how this game's out. Second quarter, you only get plus 165. If I'm already betting on a fourth quarter lead change, that lends itself to having a couple extra points getting scored. You can go back and look at it empirically, but second and fourth quarters are always the highest scoring quarters, or nearly always the highest scoring quarters. So stay away from the first and the third, even though they are plus 575 and plus 5.25. The next bet, how many players will have a passing attempt? I'm going to put another $200 on over 2.5. Both Bruce Arians and Andy Reid love to have little gadget plays. We've talked about all the skill position players. The skill position players on both sides have already thrown passes. On top of that, Chad Henne has appeared in a game this year that he did not lose. Tom Brady, again, this is not covered enough, is 43 years old. If he gets hurt, Like, you just need one other person to throw a pass. Plus 115 is just goofy enough where you don't have to root for a player getting injured. You can root for one of the gadget plays as well.
I like that.
Will either team attempt a 2-point conversion? I'm going to put $150 on this. Actually, I'm going to put $145 because the odds just updated to minus 145. There's a similar one for will either team successfully convert a 2-point conversion? However, it's only even money. And so even if you think a 2-point conversion is a 50-50 proposition or like a 60-40, you need it to be slightly better than that to make it make more sense than just take will anybody attempt one. So I've got will anybody attempt one at minus 145. The one parlay that I will not bore people with is right now Patrick Mahomes has over 28.5 completions and Tom Brady is at over 24.5 completions. So for Mahomes, that's plus 104. Brady, that's minus 125. If I've done my math correctly, that turns that bet into a plus 275, or approximately a plus 275 when you combine them into a parlay. I'm going to put 200 on that, and instead of betting the over, I'm going to bet the pass completions. So that way you can still have, if you're a little shy on the 57 points, I don't necessarily blame you, but here's a way that you can still bet for a lot of offense or bet on a lot of offense and not have it tied to needing to score a lot of points. So that will be a fun one. And then the very last bet that I have, it's a novelty bet. It is what color Gatorade will be dumped on the winning coach. These are all fun. You've got lime green / yellow at plus 275, orange at plus 160, red at plus 200, clear / water at plus 700, blue at plus 800. Guys, these two teams share a color scheme, more or less. They both have red in the color scheme. I think red is grossly undervalued at plus 200, so I'm going to put $100 on red Gatorade being dumped just because.
I love it. I love it. I was just going to say, I knew what road you were leading us down, man, and I'm completely in agreement with you. I did forget to mention, I'm going to probably throw a little bit of money. I have like $20 left over. I'm going to probably throw that on some weekend halftime performances of some sort. Gonna have to dig around and see what's good, but that's what we're here for, man. We're here to have some fun, and I definitely did with you two gentlemen today. It's been too long. We should get together more often, fellas. Well, fellas, I'm definitely looking forward to this. It looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. Again, Bucks hosting the Chiefs at home. Can't really get any better than that for Tom Brady's 10th Super Bowl here, and of course Patrick Mahomes' second consecutive. Trying to run it back here, the Chiefs are. This is definitely setting up to be excellent. Of course, you can catch the broadcast here next Sunday on CBS. So, guys, we will all see you there virtually, and want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Next Fan Up podcast. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we sign off?
Man, I hate Tom Brady.
James?
If you think that your money is not well served by our gambling advice, you should hear our investing advice.
To the moon!
I love it. I absolutely love it. And for Justin, our Seahawks superfan, for James, our Houston Texans superfan, and soon-to-be fellow franchise QB-less, just like myself, and our Matthew Stafford-less Lions. Apparently any minute now is what I'm hearing. We are signing off. You guys enjoy the big game, and we will catch you next time. Thanks again for tuning in.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together, and through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.
Josh, are you just going to become the Matthew Stafford superfan? Because I am strongly considering just becoming the Deshaun Watson superfan.